Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto Builds Harem with Nami and Robin Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. He knew it from the very first bite. Something was wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. Not only did this strangely shaped fruit taste strange, but the effects of it were even stranger. No sooner had he swallowed the first morsel of his meal, than the sweet nectar of his mid-afternoon snack turned to ash in his mouth. For some reason, he decided to swallow, despite the sudden surge of dread that swelled upward from his stomach. It was a costly mistake. No sooner had he taken that first, fateful bite, than a strange, prickling sensation trickled up his spine. Then came the burning. Hot. He yelped, for his body was suddenly incomparably so. Flames swept outward from his lips, scouring the ground black beneath him. He couldn't breathe. He felt a deep hollow enormity swelling upwards from his throat, because in the next instant, his fingers morphed into flames. No, not just his fingers. The blaze was spreading, and already he was growing numb to the searing intensity of the inferno that swirled around him. What? His hand. His wrist. Hell. His arm. Is this? In his desperation, in his overwhelming desire to quench the flames that spread from his body and consumed him, the boy didn't hesitate. Although the water beneath him had begun to boil, his legs were only partially submerged in the shallows. He didn't even consider the repercussions of hurtling himself into the water's embrace. Jettisoning himself from the riverbank that had become his favorite fishing spot, he all but flung himself into the lake, frantic to cool himself down. Finding a strange fruit in the river and thoughtlessly wolfing it down, now this. A quick swim, for all his dislike of water, an easy escape from the heat. This, too, proved to be a costly mistake. By the time he realized his error, it was too late. The current took him, dashing his suddenly rigid body against something hard. A pained gasp escaped him, and too late, he lost the breath he'd been holding. His head crashed against another rock. Then another. And yet another still. What the hell? Blackness. 00000. You owe me, Gaki. Someone or something wrested him from the water. They, whomever they were, lowered him gently to the ground. The boy lay on his back, just breathing. It was still dark, but high overhead, he made out a branch. Stretching beyond the canopy, the harsh rays of afternoon sunlight gently slapped him across the face. After the black waters, it felt like stepping into a universe of light. Someone was standing over him, speaking to him, because he recognized the words, ass, and idiot, commingled with one another. Oi, a man's voice growled out. You alive, Whiskers? Nah, Naruto, he gasped out, before a boot could nudge his whiskered cheek. My name's Naruto, not Whiskers. If he peered closely, he could just make out an orange hat, because the man standing over him had the kind of face that suggested he didn't take bullshit from anyone. Wait a second. He was barricaded, too. Why did that voice sound so familiar? Still struggling to blink away the swamp water from his eyes, the blonde struggled to regain his vision. Who the hell are you? But there was nothing. You ate a devil's fruit. The bleary voice announced suddenly. Didn't you, kid? The boot nudged him again, less gently this time. The boy known as Naruto whined aloud and in protest, the 17-year-old adolescent pushing off against the muddied footwear in an attempt to regain his balance. He failed miserably. His strength promptly left him, deserting as he flopped onto his stomach. I feel sick. An amused chortle echoed overhead. That's because you ate the Mara no mi. Was it? The boy mumbled into the dirt. He rolled over. Struggling into a sitting position, he instead found himself forced onto his back for a second time. As impossible as it seemed, he still couldn't quite make out the man's face. Whomever this fellow was, he was well muscled, save for his hat and black heavy shorts. He wore preciously little in the way of attire, making him all the more suspicious in the eyes of our waterlogged youth. Tell me, kid, how are you feeling? Hot. Naruto conceded at last, scrubbing at his eyes with the back of a hand. I feel no heat. His entire body was warm. Not even the blazing sun bothered him now. He had surpassed it. He sat up, wondering at it, even as the water turned to steam against his back and shoulders. His orange shorts, once wet and damp, were no longer so. In fact, they were perfectly dry. Save for a thin cloud of steam leaking from the remains of his once pristine blue tea, he was relatively intact. I feel good, he acquiesced at last, warily accepting a hand from the stranger when it was offered. I feel really good. He felt warm with energy. Something bright and full of fervor danced beneath his skin. It coursed through his veins and made his entire body tingle with elation. Pure power, the like of which he'd never felt before, misted from his body. A stray droplet rolled from his wet bangs to his nose, plinking to the ground as steam while the rest of its brethren began to fall around them. It suddenly occurred to him that he knew this man. Oi, Asen, Naruto began, you never told me your. I hate to drop something like this on you, but I'm going to ask you for a favor. His as of yet unnamed rescuer declared suddenly. He reached down, tousling the boy's bangs mirthfully. You see, my little brother's always sticking himself into all kinds of trouble. Despite the fact that he stood against and amongst the rain, he too exuded a strange, otherworldly mist about himself, much like the blonde. He laughed. It was a deep, throaty sound. Keep an eye on Luffy, for me, nay. With that, he pushed up his hat with a finger and exposed his face. Lightning crackled through the sky overhead, exposing the shadowed visage that lurked beneath a peculiar orange hat. Manifesting amidst the steam whilst the raindrops plinked off his exposed and tattooed back, the man smiled, even as Naruto's gobsmacked expression widened in comical fashion for a moment. Oi, Asen, he cried out in dismay, both against himself and the thunder, But when the lightning next flashed, when next he turned to thank him, to condemn him, his savior was gone. All that remained was a charred piece of earth where the man had last stood, leaving the blonde alone with the accursed power of his flames. Naruto paused, glancing at his own smoldering digits, now eerily aware of the power contained within them, the power of heat and flame. Naruto's mouth worked wordlessly. He curled his fingers into a fist, forced himself to exhale. He was trembling. He'd been this close to death, only to be snatched away by the very man he'd so deeply admired as a child. Looking back, he still felt like one, having just been in the presence of the beyond, of an event that defied the very laws of reality and time itself. That was. Only 6 words remained of the man's voice. I'm counting on you, Uzumaki D. Naruto. Somewhere up in heaven, Portuguese D. Ace leaned back on a cloud and smiled. At last, he was nearly there. Rumors carried him at last to Sabayati Archipelago. With no nakama, no crew, and naught but the clothes on his back, he opened the doors and departed the spacious cabin for what would indeed be the final time. He stepped into the last remaining lifeboat, a rickety old thing, practically falling apart at the seams. Irate, he warred with the urge to simply spread his wings of flame and wing himself to the mangroves. Unfortunately, that technique required a running start. One that, standing aboard a rickety raft, he no longer had. That being said, he couldn't help but eye the prospect of entering the relatively lawless port with more than a little Charon. Just a bit further. If his boat sank here, now, before it hit the dock, then it would be all over for him. All the power in the world wouldn't be able to save him if he took a plunge into the water. Almost. Yes. His eyes lit with renewed life as his boot came within reach of the dock. A ways behind him, he detected the sound of enthused shouts and other relieved cries of mirth and relief, mirroring those of the slaves he had freed. The ensuing chaos had attracted a large crowd of people, and for that, he was grateful. Even as he heard the odd cry or shout of thanks directed at his backside, he remained grateful for them. What happened? A woman cried. What were pirate ships doing this close to the Saboti? Someone sank those ships. This from a wizened old coot who looked old enough to be Naruto's grandfather, as if he even knew him, discerned as everyone milled about. That meant it was time to leave. The Marines were bound to hear of this, the sinking of 3 ships, done in by a wanted criminal. That said criminal just so happened to have a great and terrible loathing of all things related to slavery, was unimportant. The last thing he needed was to draw attention to himself. Not here. Not now. There would be time to pat himself on the back, later. For now, he had arrived at Sabayati. The worst was still yet to come, especially if he encountered a celestial dragon. With that thought in mind, Naruto drew his cowl up to his face, pulled his head down, tucked his chin in, doing his level best to be discreet as he began to move amongst the people. Men, women, children of all ages, many were drawn to the sight of 3 ships blazing upon the open water. They knew not the culprit, only that there was a spectacle to be seen, and naturally, such a sight drew unwarranted attention. By the time the slaves had disembarked and been helped onto the dock, he was already gone. He thought that the clear-eyed one, Hinata, locked eyes with him for a moment as he slipped away. But, surely, that was impossible. Must have been my imagination. He mused, frowning as he watched her tug on the sleeve of another figure, the latter's face hidden within a cowl. Sugoi. What a woman. Wait, was that a fan on her back? He frowned, recognizing the figure as female, not by her face, but by her figure alone. Then Hinata pointed. Then the cowled woman turned, her jade green eyes peering through the cowl, seeking, trapping, finding his sapphire. Shit. She'd saw him. Perhaps it wasn't a coincidence after all, he realized, as she began to make her way through the crowd at an undeniable pace, headed in his direction. Without a word, Uzumaki Naruto disappeared into the crowd. If the rumors were true, that the Straw Hats were recruiting members, then there was only one way to find out. A few miles outside Saboti Archipelago, Boa Hancock, the only female member of the Shichibukai, was helping Monkey D. Luffy ready his disguise. Far different than he was 2 years prior, save for his recognizable straw hat, Luffy wore a long-sleeved red cardigan with a yellow sash tied around his waist. During the last 2 years, he seems to have gotten only somewhat taller, and his hair is also faintly longer. On his chest was the X from scar he gotten from Admiral Akainu in the war over Marineford. That shadow on the horizon is the Shibondi Archipelago, Hancock told Luffy. This is as far as we can take you. We can't afford to risk our association with you to the rest of the world. You should wear this to stay safe. You don't have to do that, Hancock, Luffy replied. Nobody is going find out it's me. It's wise you keep it, Luffy dear, Hancock warned him. While the world believes you had died, your face is too recognizable even if 2 years has passed. I guess you're right then, Luffy responded as he put on his disguise. And don't worry about your things, Hancock also said as she brought in a very large and heavy book bag. I have assembled everything that is yours. Make it light, said old Nyan. Thanks for all this, you guys, Luffy replied in a gratitude manner. Also, there is just one other thing I wish to ask you, Hancock, growing embarrassed. What is it? I'm still not going marry you, said Luffy. No, Hancock half lied, still having the schoolgirl crush look. What? I'm trying to say, don't say goodbye to me. It will be easier we don't say goodbye to each since we won't be seeing each other again. What are you talking about, Hancock? Luffy answered in a good manner. Now that we're friends, I hoping to see you again. However, as Luffy left, Hancock mistaken what he says as a marriage proposal, although old Nylon told her it wasn't. Just as Luffy's boat disappeared from sight, someone called out. There is a ship coming from Sabayati. Hancock sent a Kuja pirate to grab a telescope for her while she went to have a look herself. Looking through the telescope, Hancock sees what appeared to be a majestic ship, a massive galleon. Hancock notices that the ship was heading towards them. "Sister, I think that ship is heading tight towards us," said Boa Marigold. "Is that so?" Hancock replied in an emotionless tone. "In that case, let's strip everything that ship owns." "Wait a minute, Snake Princess," said one of the Kuja pirate named Aphilandra. She was recognizable with her great height over the rest of the Kuja pirates. She was using the telescope to take a closer look on the ship. "I think O notices someone on the ship that looks familiar." As the majestic ship came a little bit closer, the whole Kuja pirates got good look on the people of the deck. That is when they notices two young women that wearing Kuja outfits. "That looks like Ino and Hinata," said one of the female pirates named Marguerite. "Ino and Hinata," old Nylon repeated in surprise. "Those two girls went missing several days while hunting. What are they doing here?" Boa Sandersonia said in confusion. A moment later, after coming aboard the ship, Ino and Hinata was kneeling before Hancock. "It was reported that you two had been gone missing for 5 days after you went to the mountains hunting." Hancock spoken down on them with stern tone, eyes motionless. "Where have you two been and what were you doing at Shabandi?" Both Ino and Hinata were quiet for a moment, as if they were too embarrassed to say anything. From the look on their faces, they feel a heavy pressure under Hancock's gaze. Finally Ino responded in a hesitating tone, "We were kidnapped by some slavers, Snake Princess." "That's impossible," Hancock replied in a disbelief tone. "There was no way any slavers could have kidnapped you from Amazon Lily." "We thought it was impossible as well, Snake Princess," said Hinata. "However, we learned that the slavers use some sort of material to easily sail across the waters of Amazon Lily, immune to the Sea King's senses." "What kind of material they're using?" Old Nyan asked, sensing something on what Hinata was saying. "I believe it is seastone material, Grandma Nylon," Hinata replied. Everyone was already aware of seastone material. It is a substance that naturally originated from the seas. It is also the main thing that can cancel out devil fruit powers. Because the calm belt is infested by countless numbers of sea monsters called sea kings, Amazon Lily is naturally protected against outsiders. However, thanks to a brilliant scientist named Dr. Vegapunk, the Marines begin using seastone on the bottoms of their warships, which they escape unnoticed by the Sea Kings. With their protection now eroded, the only way to keeping outsiders from entering Amazon Lily is for the ruler of the tribe, such as Boa Hancock, to uphold her standing as a Shichibukai, and sign a treaty with the world government for their continued security. But now slavers are using seastone substance to easily infiltrate Amazon Lily. If what Hinata and Ino said is true, how did you two manage to escape the slaves? Said another Kuja pirate named Sweet Pea. The slavers were attacked by someone, Hinata began to explain. He single-handedly defeated all of them before he disappeared into Shabandi. However, Hinata was very hesitant as she seems afraid to finish what she said. "However, what Hinata?" Hancock insisted. "Did you see your savior's face?" "I did," said Hinata. "I recognized him from the wanted posters. He was regarded by the Marines and the world government as an extremely dangerous pirate." "Do you know the name of this pirate that saved you, Hinata?" Hancock asked. She believes it was Burning Wool, Uzumaki D. Naruto. Ino finished. The very mention of the name sends a shock wave to all the female pirates, including Boa Hancock, Old Nyan, Boa Sandersonia, and Boa Marigold, whose faces was covering absolute doubt and surprise. Hancock have heard that name before and thought that she wasn't hearing right on what Ino just said. "Burning Wool, Uzumaki D. Naruto," repeated Marguerite, whose tone was in disbelief and surprise. "You must be mistaken," said another female pirate by the name of Ran. "No, we are not," Hinata insisted in her reply. "We saw him last night ago when he saved and freed us from the slavers at Shabandi." "How do you two know he's the Burning Will?" Hancock demanded. Even though she really didn't believe what Hinata and Ino has said, something inside tells her that they were telling the truth. "I saw his face perfectly, Snake Princess," Hinata gives out the details. Spiky blonde hair, fox-like whiskers, sapphiric blue eyes, it matches the descriptions on the bounty from the Marines. The crew of that majestic ship that drops us, Ino also added. They turn out to be former slaves that Burning Will freed. How do you know that? Old Nyan asked in an interest tendency. We saw the slave marks on their bodies, Grandma Nylon, Hinata explained. It looks like the mark of a world noble, a bull hoof tattoo. Although no one seems to notice it, both Boa sisters' faces were growing serious as they understand the truth since she felt the slave mark burning on her back emotionally. They claimed that Naruto freed them from the world nobles and are heading back to a hidden camp of escaped slaves. Ino carry on with her story. But there is something you also need to know, Snake Princess. I fear the man Straw Hat Luffy may be in danger, for Naruto is looking for him. What was that? Hancock cried out loud, while quickly standing up. What do you mean Luffy is in danger? Why would Burning Will be looking for him? Based upon what information we got from the crew, Ino comprehensive. They have seen him carry Luffy's wanted poster with him all along. We don't know why Burning Will was looking for him, but the ex-slaves told us that he'd been traveling across the Grand Line looking for him. Right now we need to return to Amazon Lily and warn Luffy about him. You're too late, Ran responded. Right now Luffy is already in Sabayati as we speak. There is possibility he might run into Burning Will, Naruto. If he's there, then we must find him and warn him about Burning Will, said Hinata. We don't know what his motives are towards Luffy. Suddenly Hancock bolted from her seat and began walking towards one of the smaller boats of her ship. However, Old Nylon stopped her. I know what you're thinking, Hancock, and what you're about to do. Old Nylon sternly said to her. You're planning to go after Luffy and warn him of Burning Will is looking for him. If you do that, you'll not only expose Luffy to the world, but you'll expose Amazon Lily's connection with him. But Grandma Nylon, Hinata answered desperately. Despite Luffy being a man, he's our friend. He owns him that. She right. Marguerite also agreed. We can't just stand here and do nothing. It's out of our hands, Hinata and Marguerite, Old Nyan responded. There is nothing we could do. All we need to do is trust in him in case the Burning Will catch up to him. Although she hates to admit it, Hancock knows Old Nyan is right. The last thing she needs is to attach connection between Amazon Lily and Luffy. If the world government finds out about it, they wouldn't hesitate to revoke Hancock's membership as a Shichibukai and move into position to destroy Amazon Lily, a pirate nation. Still, it tormented her deeply with the knowledge that the man she loves is beginning hunted by one of the most dangerous rookie pirates to exist in the world. Hancock has to have faith that man she loves is able to protect himself, since he had been trained by Sliver Rayleigh, the former first mate of the legendary Pirate King, on how to master his hockey powers. Yet she slowly begins to have doubts since Burning Will was looking for Luffy. After the attack on the capital Marioa, a large task force of marine warships and soldiers was dispatched to go after Burning Will, Uzumaki D. Naruto, and bring him to justice. Leading the task force was Admiral Kizaru, one of the ultimate powers regarded by the world government. However, when the Marine Task Force caught up to Naruto, he easily wiped them out. According to Admiral Kizaru's reports, Naruto was a hockey master, having displayed the 3 forms of hockey in battle. Kizaru also reported that he inherited the power of the Mera Mera no Mi, the Logia devil fruit that once belonged to Luffy's deceased brother. Naruto proved to be too much of a formidable opponent to handle, and Kizaru was forced to retreat, being the only survivor. As a result of Naruto's fighting abilities and crimes, the world government places a $350 million belly on his head, as Naruto had managed to hold his own against a marine admiral. The bounty on Naruto's head was second to Luffy's bounty, $400 million belly. Yet through her access as a Shichibukai, Hancock learned the reason of the vast bounty was because Naruto killed 3 world nobles. Before Luffy, Hancock felt it was impossible for anyone alive to oppose a world noble. After she had heard Luffy struck a world noble, she quickly befriends him, consider him trustworthy outside her family. Due to her feelings, Hancock has a tough time looking at Luffy in the heavy crush she has on him. Then last year Hancock heard about the attack on Marieoa. According to the newspapers, a pirate that goes by the name, Burning Will, begins the purge of the capital of the world government all by himself. During the ravaging of Marieoa, he freed countless numbers of slaves who escaped to freedom. To Hancock, Naruto was the second man to attack Marieoa. The first was a fishman adventurer named Fisher Tiger, who invaded Marieoa and freed thousands of slaves. Hancock and her sisters have barely met or seen him only once, as they too were slaves to the world nobles. They owe him a debt which cannot be repaid. However, to Naruto, unlike Fisher Tiger, and despite being the third man to defy the world nobles, he was the first man to commit a crime that was unspeakable. Hancock learned that Naruto had murdered 3 world nobles. The killing of the descendants of the 20 kings was unheard of, unbelievable in this world. It completely shocked Hancock, measure up to the Marines and the world governments as well. Although the killing of the 3 world nobles was kept from the public, the Marines and the world government were heavily pressured by the world nobles, angrily demanding that Uzumaki D. Naruto brought to reprimand for what he did. Under the pressure of the world nobles, the Marines and world government had been using all their resources in looking for Naruto. They'd mobilized their entire forces to look for him, not just in the Grand Line, but also the 4 other seas such as the East, West, North, and South Blue. However, Naruto had disappeared from public sight following his attack of Marieoa. Nobody seems to know where he is for the last 6 months. Hancock has long thought about the one known as Burning Will, Uzumaki D. Naruto. In her mind she believes men are degraded, disgusting and vile, that deserve to die. Through Luffy had proven to be the opposite of her viewpoint on men. She never met Burning Will in person and is unable to tell his true character. However, she has heard how he attacked Marieoa, free thousands of slaves, and murdered 3 world nobles. Fisher Tiger did the same thing and Hancock begins to think Naruto was like him, although Fisher Tiger didn't murder a world noble, especially 3 of them. Burning Will, Uzumaki D. Naruto. Hancock thoughts repeated. What kind of person are you? What are you up to? And why are you looking for Luffy? She doesn't know why this Naruto is looking for Luffy. But if harmed the man she loved, Hancock vows to avenge Luffy's death, even if it cost her life. 00000. Meanwhile, indeed, Sabayati Archipelago was the absolute best. There was food, booze, women, and plenty of entertainment to be had, if you had the coin. And if you didn't, then you were shit out of luck. Naruto mulled it over as he risked a precursory glance to the pouch tied to his belt. 100 million berry. Someone was bound to try and snatch at it, sooner, rather than later. The same could not be said of his raft, however, the light dingy having already capsized during his skirmish with the slavers, practically sinking even as its former master stepped off the mast and onto the dock. Risking a precursory glance back at this vessel, he tipped his head in farewell, because the mast had already quietly dipped below the waters of the pier. Now it was merely a matter of staying out of sight until he could find what he'd come here for. Of course, there was also the matter of ditching the bothersome wench who'd taken it upon herself to tail him halfway across Sabayati Archipelago. He was nearing Grove number 47 as planned, but so too was his pursuer. Now, he dodged into one of the many ramshackle establishments set up by the street vendors, chosen a seat, and contented himself to see what it was that fate had in store for him. That had been nearly an hour ago. Something on your mind, stranger? Naruto had been ignoring the ruckus outside. It hadn't been any of his concern. Now he creaked an eye open as someone approached the empty seat at his right. He frowned, shifted in his chair, his left eye reappearing over his shoulder, and immediately regretted it. He found himself staring at, quote question mark quote. Naruto half turned, only to find his view suddenly blocked by a very large pair of breasts. Attached to said breasts was a chest, and to that a neck, the latter eventually leading up to a darling pair of jade green orbs that utterly captured his attention and captivated him. Shit. The owner of these eyes met his gaze and smiled brazenly, brushing aside a stray strand of sandy blonde hair from that bewitching gaze. She was the girl from the pier, the one who'd been following him. Which, of course, didn't sit well with Naruto at all. A lot of things, he said, his face betraying nothing, his mind already racing. And you? More than I'd like to think about. She finished, fixated upon him. May I join you? Naruto yawned. Ah, excuse me, he said, pretending to look at the many baubles of the shop. Sure, I'm Tamari. She introduced herself abruptly, sweeping into the seat beside him. And you are Naruto, he countered, unwilling to give any other reply than a lie. I'm a traveling merchant. Fascinating, Tamari smiled warmly, reaching into her right sleeve as she did so. So tell me, Naruto-kun, do traders such as yourself regularly commit themselves to random acts of piracy? She emerged with a charred piece of timber and summarily slipped it onto the bar beneath them, her gaze never leaving his, not even for an instant. I don't think that's any of your business. Naruto countered, smiling thinly. Speaking of which, I take it you have a reason for cornering me here, on your home turf. He did not think she'd be foolish to attack him openly, and so he yawned again. He hadn't freed those slaves because he'd wanted to, it'd merely been a matter of professional disgust and distaste. There was nothing personal about the way in which he'd slaughtered the slaves. Hell, he even considered saying, I've killed people like you, just to see what her reaction would be. Oh, if only it were that easy. She shook her head. You said so yourself, you're no enemy of mine. At least, not at the moment. She was pressing him, not only with her words but her gaze, making it increasingly difficult to look away, despite the ever-growing ache in the pit of his stomach. And it wasn't hunger. Her scent, her perfume, her attire, nearly everything about Tamari bespoke of it. Not just of anxiety or gratitude, though these too could be seen in the features of her face, but also of vulnerability. Either she was a damned good liar, or she was deliberately trying to hash it out with him. Regardless of either, gods, she was cute, maybe even too cute, because for every second he spent chatting up this bodacious beauty, Luffy was getting further and further away. Well, isn't that wonderful? Naruto snapped back. Not really. She turned aside, sparing a longing glance out the porthole, the smallest of smiles adorning her features at the sights she found there. If it's not too much, I have a favor to ask of you. She exhaled softly, and a strong breeze gusted between them. I understand that you might have some business on Fishman Island sometime in the near future, and... Then she turned chalk white. Her smile shattering like so many shards of glass, her mouth working wordlessly. Naruto eventually found his curiosity aroused. Reluctantly, he allowed his gaze to drift across the table and alight upon the spectacle that had captured her attention so and left her riveted. It must have been something, to stop a woman like her in her tracks. Ah, shit. And it was something indeed. He felt his spirit sink like a stone as he saw them marching a steady rank and file line across the streets. Marines. So they were onto him after all. Blast. So much for secrecy and stealth. If the Marines knew him to be here, then an admiral was likely to be already on the way. Troublesome, as his old friend had once said. So very, very troublesome that for a terrifying second, Naruto considered just wiping out the whole of Sabayati in one giant fireball. The realization that he'd likely be destroying himself as much as the Marines, put a slight damper on that plan. As did any other notion of finding Miss Tamari to be incredibly attractive. Now, unless he wanted to tangle with an admiral again and risk destroying the archipelago itself, all plans for leisure would have to be discarded. That meant cutting ties with said buxom blonde, and cutting them fast. Naruto painted a smile onto his face. And here I thought I'd kept myself inconspicuous. Tamari smiled thinly, her face only just regaining its usual pallor. I could say the same for Monkey D. Luffy. I beg your pardon. Naruto blinked, his composure forgotten. Here. His fellow blonde offered the unamused Logia a poster. Think of it as a gift. Oh. Naruto read over it rapidly. I see. He's gathering followers here in Sabayati. Naruto frowned, the words having scarcely left his lips before a fireball ignited within his hand. He smiled at it, twirling it over in his hand as he would a coin. You've done me a wonderful service, Tamari-san. However, whatever your favor on Fishman Island might be, I'm afraid I'm not in the business of simply stealing or kidnapping or whatever it is that you might possibly ask of me. But, no buts. He leaned forward, breaching the distance between them with a deceptive amount of agility. Tamari stiffened. One moment he'd been within arm's reach. The next, he loomed over her, his lips brushing her outer lobe as he spoke, whispered softly in her ear. There was something seductive, almost primal in his gaze when he spoke. If I find out that you had any part in the marine presence here, he purred, tracing a finger over Tamari's jawline. I'm going to find you, rip out your spine, flog you with it, then scour the flesh from your bones until you beg me to kill you. He paused, let it sink in, let the words soak into her features. And if, by some chance, you had nothing to do with their arrival, then I will be perfectly blunt with you. If I see you again, following me, shadowing me, in any way, shape, or form, I will send you back to your master or masters or whomever it is that sent you to possibly recover any possibly lost property of any possible person that is possibly an owner of a possible ex-slave, in a body bag. He smiled, apparently amused by the elaborate terms he had used. Understand. She managed a nod. But, wonderful. Naruto clapped his hands together, for the Marines had passed. His point was made brutally clear in the resulting blow that chopped across her neck in speckled black spots before her vision, banishing her to the depths of unconsciousness. She didn't even have the time to cry out, and she knew only thus. Discussion closed. Sir. The shop vendor looked at Naruto questioningly as the blonde reached into one of the many racks and procured a thick, matte black cloak. Then he saw the slumped girl slung over the shoulder of his would-be customer. He flipped 2 silvers in the man's direction. That's one for the coat. He said. Another to take care of her until she wakes up. Thank you for your business, sir. The vendor replied in a hushed tone, humbling, scooping up the money that had been gifted to him. Clearly he recognized the face of the man before him, because that man's wanted poster was strewn all over Sabayati archipelago. That said man had just bequeathed a substantial amount of coin unto him, spoke not only of his generosity, but of his infamy. Naruto laid Tamari down, donned the cloak, and laid another few hundred berry at the man's feet. This, he began slowly, as for your silence. He pushed the stack of bills forward. You didn't see anything now, did you? The man's eyes bulged, his mouth working wordlessly. Nothing at all. He managed at last. Naruto smiled. Pleasure doing business with you. With a small smile, he spun on a heel, flipped up his cowl and headed toward his destination. 00000. At the Sabayati Marine Base, platoons of Marine soldiers had begun mobilizing for action, readying themselves for Grove 46 hash. A scout had reported that the infamous pirate known as Straw Hat Luffy is begin seen at pirate recruit gathering. To the Marine forces of Sabayati Archipelago, this may be a chance to redeem themselves. The Marines learned that the legendary pirate Sliver Rayleigh was being sold as a slave at the human auctioning house. Seeking a chance to capture the right-hand man of the previous pirate king, the Sabayati Marine forces surrounded it with their troops. Then come the unthinkable thing that occurs, the Straw Hat Pirates attack the world nobles. The Marine base was ordered by headquarters to prevent them in escaping, However, they failed misery as Luffy along with the captains of the Heart Pirates and Kid Pirates easily defeated them. It was a shame that emotionally burned all the Sabayati Marines. With Straw Hat Luffy now making an appearance after 2 years, they felt they are blessing with one last chance to take down the infamous rubber pirate. However, one other person that arrived in Sabayati Marine Base felt they're underestimating the Straw Hat Pirates, and his name is Sentomaru. Sentomaru was a very large man, looking like a sumo wrestler. His outfit consists of a shirt that looked like a giant brown apron with a symbol meaning, heaven, on the front, and a large red and white rope. He was carrying a very large battle axe and has marine officer coat over his shoulders. "You're going to mobilize the pacifistas?" a marine officer asked with surprised look. "Of course Sentomaru replied. "It seems you guys are underestimating the Straw Hat Pirates. You think they'll be the same as they were 2 years ago. They must had gotten much stronger, which is the reason why they came out of hiding. I can't understand what the hell was wrong with Kuma," Sentomaru kept on. "But he seems to lost his personality due his behavior. I knew someday that the Straw Hat Pirates are going show up here in Shibandi Archipelago. This time they won, escape us." Just then another marine officer, ranked as a lieutenant, enters the room. His face was covered in panic. "Captain Sentomaru," the marine lieutenant said in a panicking manner. "I have terrible news." "Whatever terrible news you got, it has to wait," Sentomaru responded to the marine lieutenant. "But you don't understand," the marine lieutenant pleaded. "I just came from the interrogation room with shocking news of dangerously and powerful known pirate here in Shibandi Archipelago. I already know Straw Hat Luffy is here Shibandi." "I'm not talking about Straw Hat Luffy, sir," said the marine lieutenant. "I'm talking about Burning Wool, Uzumaki D. Naruto." "What did you just say?" Sentomaru asked with shocking look on his face. "I trying to tell you that Burning Will, Uzumaki D. Naruto, is here on this island," the marine lieutenant said again. "Burning Will, Uzumaki D. Naruto," the marine officer repeated in disbelief. "No way, you must be mistaken, Lieutenant. Do you remember that incident last night at shipyard coating?" The marine lieutenant begins to verbalize. "There was a survivor from the burning 3 pirate ships. A pirate captain claimed that he saw Burning Wool, Uzumaki D. Naruto, with his own eyes. There no way." The marine officer refused to believe it. He hadn't been seen in many mouths since he defeated Uncle Kizaru. Sentomaru finished what he about to say. "Yeah, I know that." Sentomaru had heard how the rookie pirate driven his uncle into retreating after he wiped out 50 marine warships and several tens thousands of soldiers single-handedly. Based on his uncle's reports, Naruto was far too strong for Kizaru to defeat, and recognizing him as a hockey master. Naruto was the strongest supernova pirate to able to hold his own against a marine admiral, far stronger than the Supernova 11 that occurred here in Sabayati Archipelago 2 years ago. It was the reason why the world government decided to raise his bounty to $350 million. "Do you think he's here to join the Straw Hat Pirates?" the marine officer asked. "It's possibility," Sentomaru assumed. "But if he is, then taking down Straw Hat Pirates is going to be harder than thought." 00000. Later at a certain bar of Grove number 47, a woman was taking a drink. In her appearance, she was 20 years tall young woman, very lovely with her long orange hair, along with attractive body. Her outfit was a revealing green and white bikini halter top, low-rider jeans that exposed some of her hips, orange high-heeled sandals, and a pair of pearl-like earrings. She bore a blue tattoo on her left shoulder which represents Mikan and pinwheels. This was no ordinary woman, having a conversation with the bar owner. "Say, have you heard news about the Marines?" said the bar owner. "They've set up a new headquarters." "Isn't the Marine headquarters in Marineford, the one near Sabayati?" the orange-haired woman asked the bartender. "It was, but it's switched places with a place called G1 Base," the bar owner explained. G1 base was once a branch station right on the opposite side of the Red Line. Sengoku's replacement, the new Marine Fleet Admiral, is showing the world he means business. We're talking about the Marine headquarters within the territory of the Yoko. As a result, Sabayati Archipelago has become more uncontrollable, with pirates being able to act more freely than before, the bartender continued. I see what you mean, orange-haired woman replied. I was wondering why the town has so much wild activity than it was 2 years ago. Just then someone took a seat next to her. This newcomer was wearing a long black cloak. It was like a shroud, and it hid most of his face, save for half of his mouth and what looked like a whiskered cheek. Roughened blonde bangs could just barely be seen if one focused their gaze into the shadows of his cowl. Most, however, were simply too intimidated to give the stranger more than a passing glance. Pardon the interruption, but, he spoke, his voice tumbling to a low pitch even before the words had left his mouth. I heard that you sell good ramen here, said the cloaked stranger. I'll take 10 bowls, if you don't mind. 10. For a moment, orange-haired woman nearly choked on her drink. She rounded on the voice, almost expecting to find him there. Only one person could possibly order, let alone eat, such a vast amount of food. But no, she realized, it was not him, not the man she had been waiting for. If anything, she couldn't possibly have been closer to the truth, and yet, she hadn't a clue as to whom had just joined her at the counter. 10. The bartender gawked. Kid, are you sure you can eat that much? I'm more than willing to pay. The voice reassured the baffled owner of the bar. Please, heat them up right away. Having a new customer, the bar owner turned round to arrange the cloaked stranger's order. The orange-haired woman studied the stranger carefully. This man's body, as well as his face, was carefully hidden. That was nothing new. Many a man wanted to keep his identity a secret from those around him. Given the lack of marine presence in Sabayati, it really wasn't much a surprise that he wanted to keep his identity a secret from the general public. Then she noticed a necklace around his neck. It looked like a perfectly shaped green stone object around the stranger's neck. Examining the necklace careful, Nami estimated its worth to be lots of berry. That is, if she could manage to steal it. That was also a sizable pouch of coin that he had strapped to his waist. Can I help you with something, miss? Damn it. She balked. It seemed that her attention hadn't gone unnoticed after all. She'd been noticed as well. Upon raising her gaze to meet his, she was greeted by a small smile, twin ores of pure sapphire, and the strangest inclination that she'd seen this man somewhere before. Or, at the very least, heard of him. When he said nothing further to divulge his identity, she opted to let the matter drop. Sorry about that, orange-haired woman replied. I thought you were someone else. Someone I'm waiting for. I see. The cloaked stranger inclined his head in a gesture of minute deference. You see, I am also waiting for someone. I wonder, might I trouble you for a moment of your time, if you have some to spare? The ramen was set down on the counter before him then, and his attention swiveled toward his meal. He broke out a pair of chopsticks and, almost immediately, began to quietly partake of his meal. Just who is this guy? You seem like the type of person who knows Sabayati Archipelago like the back of your hand, the cloaked stranger began, doing his best to keep his attention fixated on his ramen and nothing else. I was wondering if you might help me with something. 10 bowls clattered to the countertop, and now, the orange-haired woman truly gawped. In less than 10 seconds, he had simply devoured 10 bowls worth of ramen. Something? The orange-haired woman inquired. Someone. The cloaked stranger corrected. There's coin in it for you, if you're willing. After a pause, he decided to add that money was of little to no value for him, and she would be well rewarded for her services. The orange-haired woman considered his offer for a moment. Obviously, this stranger was searching for something and more than willing to pay for it. The orange-haired woman smiled as she thought what price she wanted. She could, of course, demand all the berry he had in her pouch. Inevitably, her gaze gravitated toward the necklace draped around his neck. An item like that, she mused, would be far more valuable than any amount of berry. She wanted that necklace. Yes, I know much of Sabayati archipelago like the back of my hand, the orange-haired woman replied at length. But in exchange for some information there is a price. What sort of price? The cloaked stranger asked, half of his face is still hidden. From what she could see, his smile had all but evaporated. And yet he made no move to clutch at the pouch at his waist or count his gold whatsoever. Did he really place so little value in his coin? The orange-haired woman believed his relief would be palpable, therefore, when she met his gaze and named her price. That necklace around your neck, the orange-haired woman responded. That is my price. You want my necklace? Asked the cloaked stranger. This old thing. His words were edged with confusion and, was that amusement she detected in his tone? No, it couldn't possibly be. He was wearing a veritable goldmine around his neck, and there wasn't so much as a glimmer of deception in his eye. Truly, he seemed genuinely pleased by the confusion flitting across her features. Yeah, said the orange-haired woman, composing herself. I'm willing to give you any information you're looking for in exchange for it. The cloaked stranger rips the necklace from around his neck as if he was ready to give it to orange-haired woman. Just as he was about to hand it over to her, he suddenly held it back. I'm sorry, the cloaked stranger said. I don't think I could do that. Why not? Asked the orange-haired woman. It's a fair price. No, the cloaked stranger said. It wouldn't be a fair price if I handed somebody their death. What? The orange-haired woman answers back in a surprised tone. Wait minute, what do you mean by that? Handed my death? Well, the cloaked stranger began to explain. This necklace once belonged to my godmother. She once gave it to her little brother and boyfriend because it is a sign of good luck to help them in their journey. However, however, the cloaked stranger continued. Her little brother, then later, her boyfriend, each died a gruesome deaths. The necklace that she had given each of them the day before that death inevitably returned to her, and she began to view it as some kind of curse. He paused, peering at a point past the orange-haired woman, almost as if he'd seen something there, but he said nothing. How come you're wearing it? Her curiosity piqued. The orange-haired woman couldn't help but broach the subject further. Or should I expect you to die a horrible death as soon as you leave this bar? Her concern wasn't entirely fade. If the necklace was indeed cursed, then she wanted to sell it as quickly as possible before it could be passed on to her. Well, the cloaked stranger began to say. I made a bet with her. I bet her that I would be able to unlock my Haushoku haki. She didn't believe I would have it since only 1 in a million people can possess the power. The orange-haired woman had heard the word haki before. As she tried recalling her memories on what it was, someone interrupted her thoughts. Did I just hear right? Someone's loud voice was heard. $55 million belly. Bang. A gunshot was heard that causes everyone in the room to turn their heads. At a table with food and drinks, a large and fat middle-aged man has shot a pirate in front of him. He was wearing a straw hat, a shirt that is open and too tight to close due to his overweight figure, and he wearing what appeared to be boots. His legs are thin and hairy. He has an X-shaped scar on his stomach and another scar on his left shoulder. Try reading the poster correctly next time, the fat man with straw hat sneered. The least bounty is $70 million belly. I'm not interested in taking captains with bounties lower than that. But hell, I'm amazed you ever made it this far. Who is that guy? The cloaked stranger asked. That guy there is Straw Hat Luffy stranger, said the bar owner behind the cloaked stranger and Nami. Straw Hat Luffy. The cloaked stranger responded in an almost surprising tone. You're telling me that guy is Straw Hat Luffy? Of course he is, said the bartender. He's the son of the infamous Monkey D. Dragon and the grandson of the legendary Monkey D. Garp the Fist. His bounty was increased to $400 million belly after his actions between the inescapable Impel Down and the war over Marineford. Right now he and his crew are coming out of hiding, the bar owner continues. They're recruiting a strong crew for the new world. Get lost, trash. Straw Hat Luffy cruelty shouts down on the wounded man. I'm the son of the legendary revolutionary dragon, you know. We don't have any time for weaklings who are going to slow us down, said a sniper king. You've just not at our level. You think we're dumb enough to allow a fool into our crew? Turning to another crewmate, Luffy said, Hey Frankie, how many do we got? The total is about 100, Frankie replied. 3 full pirate crews have joined us. 10 of them had bounties on their heads. And 2 of them are supernovas everyone talking about, Luffy sneered. They are the brother captains, Wet Hair, Caribou and Blood Splatterer, Koribo. Their bounties are worth $210 million and $190 million belly on their heads. Those are the kind of guys we needed in our crew. Wouldn't it be so much fun if we had Burning Wool, Uzumaki D. Naruto on our crew, Captain? Said Nami. He has the largest bounty of the supernovas, $350 million belly, the biggest bounty we've come across so far. Yeah, agreed Sogeking. But nobody's seen him these many months since the incident at Marieoa last year. However, even if he did want to join our crew, it will be a big risk since he's been hunted mercifully by the Marines and the world government. Perhaps you're right, sighed Luffy. Ah, screw it. We got enough bounties to expand our reputation in the new world. Ain't that right? Turning to the bar owner where the cloaked stranger and the orange-haired woman are, Luffy shouted, Oi! Bartender! Bring me some rum. He grinned lecherously seconds later as his gaze fell upon the orange-haired woman whom the man had been servicing a moment before. And you lovely lady, it's obvious you've been standing there for a long time. Why don't you come and have a drink with me, No thank you, answered the orange-haired woman curtly. I'm waiting for someone. Everyone in the room felt their jaws drop and their eyeballs bulge from their sockets. A refusal, a blatant refusal, orange-haired woman had turned down Monkey D. Luffy. To refuse an extremely dangerous pirate with a bounty of $400 million was unwise. So unwise in fact, that the bartender felt inclined to remind the woman of her mistake. Listen lady, the bar owner whispered to her on frightening tone. You'd be better off doing what that guy said. That mad pirate went charging into the middle of the war 2 years ago. I'm sure you heard about it, right? She refused to honor him with a response. Waiting for someone, are you? Said Sniper King as he approached the orange-haired woman. I'm sure he just a puny weakling who'll be crying on his knees the second he hear Captain Luffy's name. Now get over here right now. He leaned forward threateningly, clearly believing that the orange-haired woman was about to come to her senses and grovel for mercy at their feet. Instead, the cloaked stranger deftly placed himself between Sogeking and the orange-haired woman. Now, rather than dragging the vixen over to the captain as Sogeking had intended, he found the hand of that man clamped upon one massive forearm, halting him in his tracks. And to make matters worse, Sogeking couldn't seem to move. Literally his arm, no, his entire body, was suddenly frozen in its tracks as he locked gazes with the man who had dared to assault him. Listen friend, said the cloaked stranger. Why don't we just let bygones be bygones and leave the nice lady alone? With a deft flick of his wrist he released the Sniper King, a simple backhanding that not only expressed his contempt, but utterly embraced the famed king of snipers. It was, quite literally, a slap on the wrist. Though this particular slap was heated to nearly 90 degrees Celsius, and therefore, quite warm in its intensity. For a man of Sogeking's caliber, the blow should have been nothing. Sogeking screamed. Ah, he yelled. It was a plaintive, pitiful whine. Hot. It's hoot. Shut up, Sogeking. Frankie hissed, seeking to calm the belligerent man. It's not funny anymore. It should be. The man lowered a smoking hand, revealing that it was he who had left the red palm print in the flesh of Sogeking's forearm. I didn't think that little love tap would hurt you so much, Sogeking. He all but spat the last syllable, as if the term itself was poison to him. Abruptly, the humor trickled from his features like so much steam, although there was no such thing to be found in this silent challenge. Suddenly, the silence was deafening. "You better mind your own business, fellow," Luffy warned the cloaked stranger, his contempt evident. "I despise fools, above all fools who don't mind their own business." The threat alone was enough to make the bar patrons quiver in their boots. The orange-haired woman simply arched an eyebrow, took a sip of her drink and wondered at the true identity of this man who had so pointlessly come to her aid. "Fools, you say?" The cloaked stranger scowled, a blood-red iris reappearing over his shoulder. "Funny you should mention that." It was then that Luffy had a hard time seeing the man's face. It was carefully hidden by the hood of his black cloak, save for his mouth, and he'd gone to great efforts to keep it that way. "I too despise fools. Above all, a fool who thinks to pose as a pirate and pass himself off as one." "Why are you wearing hood over your head?" Luffy asked, wondering who this cloaked stranger was. "Who are you?" "I'm keeping my real name and appearance hidden," said the cloaked stranger. "I'm a wanted man by the Marines and world government. They find out I'm here in Sabayati Archipelago, then their going sends a heavy amount of soldiers after me." He paused, thumbing his chin, as if in thought. "Perhaps even a Marine admiral or two." "You're a pirate," said Nami. "Yes," the cloaked stranger responded tersely. "Then how about you remove that cloak that covers your face," said Straw Hat Luffy. "And tell us your name and bounty. If your bounty is higher than $70 million berry, maybe I'll even offer you a place in my crew, ha." "No," cloaked stranger shouted. "Nani." Everyone panicked as the cloaked stranger said no to the most dangerous pirate alive. "Huh," Straw Hat Luffy replied in confused tone. "What you mean, no?" "I just said no," said the cloaked stranger. "That's all. You think that's the answer I want here?" Luffy snarled, reaching for his flintlock pistol. "I'm telling you to take off your cloak and reveal yourself. Do you have any idea who I am, who you're messing with, punk?" Everyone but for the orange-haired woman dropped to the floor at the appearance of the pistol. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy. I have a bounty of $400 million berry, and you're nothing." "So you claim." The stranger didn't so much as flinch, staring down the barrel of the gun with something akin to resignation. The orange-haired woman watched the impending standoff and felt a bead of sweat slip down her neck. Had it always been so hot in here? And watched and waited for the standoff to meet its inevitable conclusion. Surprisingly, the man held up a hand, palm outward, fingers splayed, then curled into a fist. "Last chance," Luffy crowed, ignorant of his own peril. "Take it off or eat lead." "I wouldn't, if I were you," the stranger cautioned. "Bullets won't work on me." With a resounding clack, Luffy pulled back the catch on his pistol. "Go to hell." The man heaved a great and heavy sigh. "Miss," he murmured softly. "Yes." The orange-haired woman blinked. "Get down." And with that, the bar erupted in a curtain of orange flame. Nami considered herself to be a practical woman. She had to be, serving as the navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates. Her overbearing logic, greed, and overall reason were practically a necessity when surrounded by a bunch of testosterone-fueled men, most of whom acted like boys and pirates, no less. She had an answer for everything. Every change in the wind, in the currents, for every cloud into the sky, and then some. But she didn't have an answer now. Not for this. Only a moment ago, Monkey D. Luffy faked that he had shot a perfectly harmless stranger. One who had little to no monetary concern whatsoever, claimed to be a master of hockey as well as a pirate, and, apparently, believed that bullets could not harm him. While she found this interesting, the fact that he claimed to be a wanted man whom both the world government and the Navy were pursuing was more than enough to set her threat estimation to a bright "get the hell away from this guy" red. "Miss." She blinked. "Get down." Unfortunately, she'd been too mesmerized at the time to even consider fleeing. That, And she really didn't want to turn a blind eye to the fakes who were claiming to be them. That ugly bitch didn't look a damn thing like her and give them the satisfaction. Instead, she sat there, her eyes growing ever larger as negotiations broke down between the pirate and the faker, ending in the former taking a mouthful of lead from the latter, to which the former smiled disarmingly. Bang! Imagine her surprise when the bullet went clean through his skull, wedged itself in the wall, and that smile did not fade in the slightest. He'd died on his feet, she supposed. It wasn't exactly the cleanest way to go, but away he had went, or so she'd assumed. Then the first ember settled upon her nose. Nami blinked, brushed it away, alarmed at this sudden turnabout, as well the disbelieving screams offered by the crowd in reply, scrabbling back from the cloaked stranger as if he were the devil himself. Which, given the eerie circumstances of his supposed death, was a distinct possibility. The cloaked stranger half turned, exposing a blood-red iris over his shoulder. Flames licked across the gaping wound that had severed the left side of his face. But instead of blood and guts and gore as there should have been, there was naught but flame. Glowing tendrils of smoky shadow and flame gathered about the offending injury, forming up on one another after the other, gaining substance and form, until something miraculous happened. Bereft of the tattered cowl that once shielded it, the ruined portrait that was his face consumed itself in flame and simply closed the wound from the inside out. For a moment, for one blessed moment in the instant before he yanked that blasted cowl back into place, the orange-haired woman saw his face. She recognized it almost instantly, for how could she not? He was a handsome fellow, if intense. But that absent thought was neither here nor there. Oh, my gods. Despite herself, despite all her calm, cool, level-headedness, Nami lost the ability to breathe. She'd seen him. She'd seen his face before, many, many times over the past 2 years. His was a face that was known even in Weatheria, for tales of his infamy, exaggerated or no, had spread far and wide, even there. She saw him in those flickering embers of flame and fire, and she wanted to say something, but she could not bring herself to speak the word she wanted so very desperately to say. She was looking at a man amongst men, a man whose very soul was said to be blacker than the ninth circle of hell. A man who murdered whomever dare stand in his way, and a man not to be trifled with, because his wrath was simply not something that mustn't be aroused. She'd heard the stories. She'd read the papers. This was the one man whom stirred in her both fear and respect, though whether the former was stronger than the latter remained to be seen. This was, "Oi oi oi, young lady." She dimly recalled the warning Mr. Haradas had given her. "If you see burning will on Shabandi, will you give him my regards?" Nami had dismissed the comment at the time, chalking it up as nothing more than one of the man's many quirks. Thanks to the donation he made, we'll be able to continue our research here for what might be another decade. She hadn't bothered to ask how it was that Mr. Haradas knew one of the most infamous rookies in the Grand Line. Let alone why said criminal would possibly make a donation to something other than whores and booze. She'd been busy at the time, far too busy to take heed of what might have been her only warning. But how could she have known that Mr. Haradas would know? That burning will, aka Uzumaki D. Naruto, would be on Shabandi Archipelago. It was also at that time that Nami realized something else, something far more devastating than knowing that she'd nearly been duped into accepting a cursed necklace from a potentially chivalrous stranger. No, this was worse than that. Much, much worse. She had looked him in the eye and she hadn't even known. She'd been shooting the breeze with a mass murderer without even knowing it. Oh, this is just too much. His words, the words of the man who had the entire world after his head, gently tugged Nami from her reverie. The infamous rookie had doubled over with one hand clutching at his stomach as though it might burst between his fingers. He was laughing, Nami realized. Incredibly, he seemed to find the fact that he had been shot amusing somehow, and at length, he straightened, standing woodenly and not taking enough care. "I came here looking for Monkey D. Luffy." He snickered softly to himself. But you know, I never expected to find him this quickly. Suddenly, he turned, his gaze fixating on Nami with such an intensity that for a moment she thought he might turn on her as well. He didn't. Instead, he looked her up and down as if truly noticing her for perhaps the first time. Nami felt her cheeks darken, such was the overbearing power of his eyes. Abruptly, he averted them. Hee hee. He chuckled softly as his gaze slid away from her. Hee hee hee. Ha ha ha. The formerly cloaked stranger laughed. It was a deep, throaty sound and it chilled her to the bone. Everyone, including the Strafut pirates, cowered before that laugh. Only the fake Luffy managed to maintain some of his former belligerence. He jammed the flintlock pistol back into its holster, wiped the shock and dismay from his face, and rushed to his feet as though he feared someone would somehow beat him to the punch. Aha! He laughed, painting a smile upon his face when all eyes eventually found their way back to him once again. Why yes, it's just as I suspected. The great, burning will, has decided to join us, after all. Seeing their captain's bravado faint though it most certainly was, the crew of impostors seemed to regain some of their former bluster. It was only Burning Will who smiled in kind. Oh, I'll join you all right. He paused, smiling sardonically. But first, I have a question. Sure. The Luffy seemed to be rapidly regaining his composure, Nami realized, and her own awe at the sight of Burning Will was rapidly evaporating. She found herself making for the door, all respect for this so-called criminal lost and forgotten. Then an unusual inquiry stopped her cold. She paused, her curiosity piqued, and before long, it became clear to her just what kind of man this Burning Will truly was. Tell me, Luffy, Burning Will continued with that deadly soft tone of his, why waste a bullet on me like that? Aren't you a rubber man? The silence was deafening. Hey, that's right, someone whispered. I heard that. Strafut was made of rubber, wasn't he? Yeah, that's right, another added. But then, why use a pistol? Still another asked. Shish. Quiet. He'll hear you. For a moment, fear seemed to prevail over the bar patrons. Then, Burning Will took a step forward. It was a small step, nothing imposing about it whatsoever, but the intent behind it remained clear. Peering upward at Luffy, he reached into his breast pocket. Everyone cringed aside in terror, expecting him to pull out a weapon of some sort, only to flush with shame as he exposed a wanted poster bearing the latter's face. Also, would you mind telling me why you don't look a damn thing like your wanted poster? He asked genially. In that moment, as the whispers grew ever louder, Nami mentally reassessed her opinion of Burning Will. Now would have been a perfectly reasonable time for her to leave, as she could not hope to gain any coin from staying to watch the impending brawl. Like a certain priest she knew, Burning Will was well renowned for his legendary temper and an annoying tendency to incinerate those who vexed him. It was for this reason, if not her own personal satisfaction, that Nami observed the proceedings with great amusement. She couldn't be bothered to deal with the fakes herself, of course, but witnessing their downfall would still be all too satisfying. Especially at the hands of this rather handsome pirate. Now, if only he'd take off that blast cowl too so she could get a good look at his face. Meanwhile, the tension was reaching a breaking point. You better watch yourself, buddy, Luffy snarled at his fellow rookie in a dangerous tone. You might be a hotshot with a $350 million berries on your head, but my bounty is $400 million berry, which is higher than yours. Meaning I'm 10 times more dangerous than you can never be. He loomed over Burning Will with his girth, clearly trying to use his reputation in a feeble attempt at intimidation. Yes, and more's the pity. Burning Will sighed. Unfortunately, you're not the Luffy I'm looking for. What? Burning Will cocked his head to one side, the smile dropping from his face to shatter across the floor like so much broken glass. Abruptly, the bounty poster in his hand began to fizzle and wither, burning itself from the bottom up. In a matter of seconds, it had been reduced to a pile of ash on the floor. Now it was that everyone's attention fell upon him, this stranger who had not once, but twice, demonstrated the powers of flame and fire. Hey, did he just? Nami watched as the realization flowered in their eyes and withered in equal measure. She watched as they shrank back from him, men, women, and children alike. Watched as Naruto brought his palms together and called upon his element for the third and final time. When they parted, he was clutching a brand, no, a pommel, no doubt was that a hilt of some sort. Weaving streaks of orange-yellow flames flung themselves between them as his hand straddled the shadow flame once more, but this wasn't an etching of fire. It was fire, inside the blade. Where the crimson burned, and for several inches past it, the sword became transparent as glass. It is as if the limb itself had become flame, and that flame banished the darkness to the trees and was something almost unholy within its majesty. Now spread from shoulder to fingers, his hand blazed out flame, nearly 3.5 feet in front of him, and then died down. Nami was on the verge of forsaking this endeavor altogether before Naruto smiled and brought the blade around in a sweeping arc. Cold dread froze the lot of them further as the pirate placed his hands further apart. He'll set the bar on fire. He brought the other hand up and flexed it, and his fingers closed around the fires. Held them, and the blade rematerialized. Simply appearing from the chakra, glowing reddish black as was his skin, the crescent hook of a tip dangled from a relatively simple and not at all oblong pole of a handle, one that he shouldered it deprecatingly. Naruto didn't seem to mind at all that he was holding a weapon composed of more flame than actual steel, and if he did, he wasn't doing much to convey that annoyance. Once more, the gaze of Burning Will found hers. His eyes narrowed slightly, a silent, unspoken warning that told her to, quite simply, get down. Kagutsuchi. By the time she did think to drop to the floor, a screen of orange blaze was discharged without warning. While everyone felt the strong heat of the orange flame, the only ones who absorbed the worst of the orange fire were the imposter Straw Hat Pirates. Unable to believe their eyes nor their ears, the unlucky impostors were flung clear out of both bar and battle, sent flying across the next street where they caromed into the stall of an unfortunate dung vendor. Yet strangely, the only one that was left standing was the mysterious stranger who seems unharmed by the flames. It almost seemed as if the orange cone of destruction might have originated from his very flesh. But that was impossible. The only person she'd ever seen using such an ability had been dead for 2 years now. The only other man who held such an ability had vanished from the face of the earth for 6 months after making a name for himself in battle and blood and booze. Now, as a curtain of orange flames swept itself between them, roiling, boiling, baring its fangs with a mind-numbing intensity, she began to understand. With a squelching soft sound they retreated inward, forming human flesh once more. Sorry about the mess, the cloaked stranger apologized to the shocked bar owner, paying for the damages inflicted by the fire. I believe this should cover the damages, plus a little interest for making me those last 10 bowls. The owner gawped as he beheld the stack of berry that had just been handed to him. Muttering to himself that he'd never seen so much money in my life, he offered his most humble gratitude and swiftly departed. Nami's sweat dropped. Is this guy for real? But before she could hope to voice her opinion on the matter, the eyes of Burning Will found hers once more. They were no longer the smoldering scarlet they'd been previously, she realized, though the thought of staring into serene sapphire brought her little comfort. She could still see the rage burning beyond his vision. At length, he smiled. It was a warm smile, this one, bellying the flames he had so blatantly released upon Shabandi Archipelago. He chuckled. It was a soft, amused sound. I see you heeded my warning, Miss Navigator. He let the statement hang, unadorned between them. And for that, you have my thanks. There was a strange twinkling within his eyes as he spoke, because Nami held no illusion that this vagabond did not know who she was, having ascertained her true identity. All that remained was to see what he'd do with the information he'd gleaned from her. As with most men, he didn't fail to disprove her suspicions. Nami. He spoke suddenly, looking as if he'd just had the mother of all epitomes. That's your name, isn't it? So you're the navigator of the Strafut crew, are you? Like hell I'm admitting that. Nami thought to herself. No way. Absolutely not. I don't know what you're talking about. She really didn't want to reveal her identity. Bad enough that Burning Will was here on Shabandi Archipelago. Bad enough that he'd already raised a bar and barbecued a band of ungrateful imposters. But it would truly be bad for her if she was to be recognized in the company of such a man, one who had the world nobles breathing down his neck, no less. For all your skill, you're a poor liar. Naruto sighed and sent her deception crashing down around her ears. I'll ask you again. You are Nami, are you not? Like I said, Nami began anew, desperately hoping to impress upon the rookie the need for silence. I have no idea who or what you're talking about. Do not lie to me. For a moment he was fire and brimstone again, and Nami could see the murderous intent raging just beyond the veil of those crystalline orbs. Suddenly the likeness of herself was thrust before her face, because Nami was looking at herself. In the form of a wanted poster. I recognized you from the moment I walked into that bar, and your face has only grown even more beautiful than the one in this poster. Now, I will ask you again. Are you, or are you not, Nami-san? Even more beautiful. She wondered at the compliment for a moment longer before his tone convinced her to comply. Yes. She relented, albeit softly. What do you want with me? Nothing. Really. Naruto answered. Really? Naruto grinned foxily. I just wanted to have the honor of meeting the infamous cat burglar, face to face. He mused this aloud, the smile simply refusing to leave his face. I must say, however, your bounty does not do you justice. Or does the world government truly see you as so little a threat? He shrugged then, dismissing the matter as an afterthought. But I digress. Say, if your captain was anywhere nearby, you'd tell me, wouldn't you? You see, I've been searching for him for the past 2 years, and now I believe that he might be here in Shabandi. And why might you be looking for him? Nami demanded. Naruto's expression darkened instantly. I've a score to settle with him. A cold pang of horror seized upon Nami's heart. A snake of dread coiling inside her gut, a snake of losing everything she'd ever held dear, and not knowing the price. The look in his eyes was a strange one, torn somewhere between amusement and nostalgia, in direct contrast to the stabbing spike of panic that stabbed through her breast. How could he say such things and remain nonchalant? How could he have a bone to pick with him, of all people? With Luffy. What on earth had that idiot done this time? Angering one of the world's foremost pirates, whose bounty was already so dangerously close to his own. If Burning Will had any business with Luffy, then it certainly wouldn't prove to be pleasant. Of this, if nothing else, she was certain. Fury washed Nami to her toes. If Luffy truly was in danger, and it was any fault of hers for leading Burning Will find him. I think it's best you get out of here. Naruto said suddenly. Although that attack may have knocked the wind out of them, they won't stay down on count and may take it out on you if they come back. A fleeting fixation of concern flitted across his features. And if they're anything like who I think they are, then they will be back. So you're just going to leave? Nami stated flatly. Just like that. It's obvious you don't know where he is. Naruto answered. Therefore, I see no point in haranguing you further. Hey! Nami called out to the stranger who was heading to the doorway. Wait a second. Nami. Someone in the room called her name. Hearing her name called out, Nami turned to where the one that called her name. In that direction was someone she fully recognized. It was Usopp, but far different than before. Instead of a tanned, slim teenager, he was now taller and muscular. He was wearing what appeared to be a new pair of goggles around his neck and has some ear protectors on. He also now has a little goatee along with a new white suncap he wears on his head. In addition, he has a new pair of rolled-up yellow pants with red suspenders, and a couple of walking boots. He has a brand red shoulder bag, but he still has his white, blue striped wristband on his left arm. Usopp, is that you? Yeah, it's me, he replied. It's great seeing you, Nami. You seem to have changed. So have you, Nami responded happily. You were here all the time. I was, Usopp answered. I was about to use a new technique I learned on that guy that bothering you until that fellow in dark cloak steps in. You know who he is? No, Nami replied. He was looking for something in town. He looked familiar, but I can't seem to recall who he is. Well, we better do what he said Usopp. Because those imposters he blew away, they'll be back. While the two of them quickly left, the imposters emerged from where they fell, burned, injured, humiliated, and angry. They didn't heed the fact that they could have easily, all too easily been burned to a crisp by the legendary, burning will. At least, Monkey D. Luffy, didn't seem to recognize that. Find that guy, fake Luffy angrily snarled. Shoot him on sight. 00000. At the same time, the cloaked stranger, who happened to be Uzumaki D. Naruto, was making all due haste from the scene he had created. He'd seen the looks on their faces, all of them. They'd seen his face. That navigator certainly had. While it was indeed regrettable that she knew next to nothing where the whereabouts of Monkey D. Luffy were concerned, there was nothing that could be done about it, and thus, it was time to move on in his search. For the time being, Naruto knew he'd just pulled himself back into the limelight. While he didn't regret in helping that orange-haired woman, the last thing he needed was for the Marines to find out he'd taken shelter on Shabandi. If they did, they'd call in an admiral to look for him, certainly. Should that happen, not only would the fighting destroy the mangroves, but the chance of finding Luffy as well. He couldn't risk a battle to distract him from his destination, especially with Akainu. Even though Naruto is confident in his fighting abilities, he was still not yet ready to face Akainu, yet. He needs the time and place if he was going to be ready to avenge Ace's death. That is why he has spent years mastering his powers to full measurement should he faces Akainu. He had thought Akainu will be the one sent to come after him after he attacked Marieoa, but instead was Kizaru. As his perverted mentor once told him, always pick the right time and right place to fight your enemy. Naruto also thought about those imposters back at the bar. Whoever those idiots were, they didn't realize what kind dangerous siltation they'd got themselves into. While they appeared to dress in the similar fashion of the Straw Hat Pirates he remembered, they looked nothing like the originals, let alone act the part right. The leader that was pretending to be Luffy, was the worst of them. That fat fuck should be grateful I didn't kill him outright. Naruto groused aloud to himself. He reminded him of the world nobles, though rather less extreme. Awfully cruel and arrogant, using Luffy's status to act with impunity, getting away with everything while the men and women around him lived in utter fear of his reputation. Surely he must have been a brilliant liar, if he was able to fool everyone into thinking he's the real deal. But he's an idiot for thinking he could possibly emerge unscathed. Also stupider than he imagined. While the imposter Luffy may not realize it, his arrogance was leading to his downfall far sooner than he realized. And to the imminent arrival of an admiral. 00000. Meanwhile, in Marieoa, what you mean you're coming with me? Kizaru asked in drawn disbelief. There's no need for two admirals. There are two extremely dangerous pirates roaming around on Shabandi Archipelago, Akainu cut him off. Not only, Straw Hat, Monkey D. Luffy but, Burning Wool, Uzumaki D. Naruto as well, this truly is a job for two admirals, if not three. He let the statement hang unadorned between the two of them. The silence was deafening. For a terrifying second it seemed like Kizaru would outright refuse the offer of his fellow admiral. Then he sighed. And why is it so important that you come with me? He asked again. Burning Will, came Akainu's curt reply. Oh ho. Kizaru arched an eyebrow. So that's the reason, is it? Akainu cringed, refusing to admit that he had a personal stake in this. Because it was personal. He'd been humiliated by a certain pirate nearly a year ago, though said pirate'd fled from him rather than fight when Jewelry Bonnie had quite literally been snatched out of his grasp and impelled down. Most speculated that Burning Will's infiltration of prisons past were solely to gain follows to his cause. Akainu knew better. Jewelry Bonnie hadn't even spent all of an hour in the infamous undersea gall before another, nameless prisoner, had joined her. Akainu hadn't taken any notice, nor did he care for that matter, who appeared to be in her crew. All he knew was that, somehow, Burning Will had snuck into Impel Down, massacred the guards, defeated Magellan with substantial ease, and made his departure. And after his escape, amongst the countless hordes of prisoners that could not be recaptured, was Jewelry Bonnie. He shouldn't be dwelling on such a simple matter, but still, it irked him. He'd caught up with this so-called escapee, only to have his ship burned out from beneath him whilst Burning Will and his fellow fugitives made their escape. But Borsellino was peering at him expectantly, and thusly, Akainu had to grace him with a reply of his own. "There no doubt in my mind, Monkey D. Luffy is stronger than he was before 2 years ago, Akainu continuesti, he's probably acquired the use of haki by now. And, Burning Will, Naruto, this is the same man that defeated you a year ago, and he's bound to have only grown stronger by then." He pointedly left out the fact that it was either him or her that had to accompany Kizaru, given that Aokiji was now the new fleet admiral in place of Sengoku. Naturally, they'd been expected to find a replacement for Aokiji in the last 2 years. And they had. Unfortunately, the replacement for Aokiji had an annoying tendency that involved the careless slaughter of not only the pirates she was assigned to capture, but that was neither he nor there. He wanted Burning Will alive. Therefore, she wasn't to be permitted on Shibandi for the duration of this assignment, lest half the population of Shibandi find themselves massacred. Honestly, that bloodthirsty woman scared him shitless. "You don't have to bring that up," Kizaru complained wistfully, referring to the bruising he'd received at the hands of Burning Will. "It's embarrassing." Flashback. Marieoa was burning. Great columns of flame swept through the spire, sweeping clouds of ash and smoke across the whole of Marieoa. They devoured everything without pause, sparing only those terrified slaves who fled for their very lives, some risking a glance back at the strange, swirling inferno that raged behind them, occasionally taking the form of a man at times, a demon the next, then something else entirely and altogether. For these were no ordinary flames. Contrary to the whims of the wind, the fire seemed to move of its own accord, barreling down not on the slaves who tried to escape its wrath, but whomever was foolish enough to dare impede their path. Those who sought safety and shelter from these flames of justice found that safety, and those who wished otherwise, those who served the world nobles, found themselves charred and burnt and branded in recompense for their temerity. There was naught but travesty for those who tried to recapture the escapees, fishman and giant and human alike. All were freed. None were left behind. And all the while, the once proud land of Marieoa burned beneath these flames. It was to this scene that the Marine Task Force and Admiral Kizaru arrived. It was within this carnage, this chaos, that they first heard the sound of screaming, of shouting, and, most eerily, of laughter. Spread out. Kizaru began to issue the men their orders almost immediately. "He should be here somewhere, A dim, cool blue illumination spread across the plaza, gradually brightening. It started as a whisper. Then, all in a rush, he came into focus. Eyes burning with blue flame, puffs of fire escaping his lips with every breath, body alternatively invisible, wispy as black smoke and gleaming, hard iridescent black metal muscle. He appeared in their midst without warning, then vanished. There one moment, gone the next. With his sudden departure, so too did 7 Marines forsake their bodies for the underworld. Suddenly, Kizaru was alone in the plaza. He stood there for a moment, blinking, slowly registering the loss of his troops. The bluish glow was already fading, rounding a nearby corner with an indefatigable speed. only to find itself headed off by Kizaru. The admiral was already fading into existence as the robed figure skidded to a halt before him, its eyes little more than twin sparkles of crimson in the twilight. An impasse was struck. For a moment the assassin stood there, bouncing on the balls of his feet while he considered his next move. Borsellino wasn't too accommodating in that regard. Yasukani no Magatama. He drawled lazily. Piercing pinpricks of light lanced out from his fingertips, skewering the shadowy assailant, riddling him with holes as though he were cottage cheese. The silhouette did not cry out under the barrage, nor did he flinch or whimper, much to Kizaru's annoyance. Instead he answered with a gush of fire. A veritable sheet of violet indigo flame rushed forth against the harsh jewels of Infinite's mal-brilliance and set the entire courtyard awash with flame. Oh! Borsellino blinked as black spots speckled across his vision for a moment. You're a Logia type, aren't you? The intruder did not honor him with a response. At least, not of the verbal realm. His heel crackled outward, little more than an electric blue blur, and for the first time in nearly a decade, Kizaru tasted blood in his mouth. The flinty, acrid taste caught him off guard, lending his attacker just enough time to plug his knuckles into the admiral's gut. Damn, but the boy was quick. Then there was pain. Pain, searing and agonizing, pain, the likes of which he'd never felt before, even as he felt one of his ribs splinter beneath the blow. Hockey. Somehow, the boy had imbued both blows with hockey, so much so that he was able to deal actual damage to his physical form. The lad doubled back and Borsellino braced himself to dissolve before the next attack could find his face, or worse. And then, as suddenly as they had come, the flames were gone. So too, was their master. Kizaru blinked the heat haze away from his eyes and spat the blood from his mouth as he struggled to take in the signs he'd been given by his body. The boy darted out of sight around the next corner, nearly loosing the hood of his cowl as a stray beam took out the hem of his robe. Then he was gone again. Undeniably irate, Admiral Kizaru stormed around the corner. Ryusenka. Kizaru stood in dumbfounded disbelief as he materialized directly in the gaping maw of an inferno. And still the intruder reached out with the flames, past him farther, farther, farther still until his element was barely even recognizable. KK Cram. An unspeakably bright flare peeled open the horizon behind them. Despite the shouts and the screams of his men, Kizaru didn't turn. He'd seen this technique before. Already he knew what he would find there, should he show his back. The destruction of their fleet, ruination surrounding them, one and all. With the loss of his ride home, he stormed into the keep, ready to do battle with this flaming apparition whose abilities so greatly resembled those of Portuguese D. Ace. Still, he couldn't believe his eyes. He sat motionless as God atop the mountain of corpses, the demon awaited their approach. Set upon his throne of destruction he inclined his head politely, looking down upon them for the ants that he clearly thought them to be. So still was he, that Borsellino almost mistook him for a statue at first. But a statue did not move, nor did it laugh as this one did. Here was a rare breed of man. The first man to actually murder a Tenryubito since the founding of the world government itself. He was smiling. Well now, are you the one who did this? He asked through a strained grimace. Did I do this, you ask? The man laughed. It was a deep, throaty sound. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Remember it well, you who allow the subjugation of those who are oppressed. He beckoned, indicating the chaos and destruction that had not so long ago been the holy land of Marieoa. Do you see this? He asked. This is your justice. This is the sin that the world government permits, because the children of the 20 kings desire it to be so, because they wish it to be. It is filth. It is perversion. It is decay. He scoffed, rising from his throne of bodies and flesh. Tell me, Admiral, do you know why it is that I have not simply destroyed this postule of a city? He stood woodenly, not taking enough care. I will tell you. Were I to destroy this place, this Marieoa, I would leave no evidence of my existence behind. Therefore, I have decided instead to wait for one of your so-called champions of justice, a marine admiral, to find me in this place, so that I could make my cause clear. Kizaru snapped his heel forward. Naruto twisted, arching his back at the very last instant. Instead of striking him in the face, as the admiral had intended, the wisp of light banked overhead, narrowly missing its given target, where it screamed off into the horizon. The blonde held his pose for a moment longer before he straightened, bending at the knees with all the grace of a fluid dancer, such was the ease with which he rose again. I warn you, do not underestimate me so easily, Naruto pointed out. I have mastered all three forms of haki. I tell you what's not going be easy, Kizaru began to warn Naruto. After what you did, the world government is not going rest until they catch you. I'm sure they going place a enormous bounty on your head, if you're able to fight me evenly. Yet even if you kill me here, there will be other that will still coming after you. He sneered with a smile as he'd always done, but the pirate's remark failed to leave him anything less than amused. I'm not trying to kill you, Naruto declared. Not yet. I've made sure that the others managed to get away. As I said previously, fight me at your own risk, but know that you shall not pass, regardless of the outcome. He clapped his hands together and suddenly his hands were wreathed in flame. But these were more than any flame. All manner of color and perception clouded his fingertips, wreathing his hands in various shades of oranges, reds, yellow, indigo, violet, black, and beyond. Kizaru pondered these flames and their eerie properties before speaking. I take you won't surrender, then? Kizaru ventured. That depends. The burning specter blew a drawn-out breath. Are you truly intent on fighting for a cause so unjust? Now, isn't that a silly question? Kizaru drawled. I've come here just for you. The burning man did not find this amusing. So you've come to take my head, Marine Admiral. He swept his fingers forward in a grandiose gesture, encompassing the ruination surrounding them. I must say, you have disappointed me. I'd hoped that you, of all people, would understand. But if you do not, then perhaps you'll fare better than the others. Sure. He shrugged his shoulders, and the cloak fell to the wayside, smoldering away in a trail of embers. If you desire my head, by all means. Try and take it. He raised the flames to the surface of his skin, and brought them not only into his arms but around his face. He allowed them to break through his scalp and form a living crown, a blatant mockery toward those he had slaughtered. There was pain there in his face, pain as they broke the skin and as they broke through channels of power that he had blocked long ago. He was powerful again now. Powerful and dread. What do you think you are, Fisher Tiger? Kizaru challenged Naruto on that fact. I'm sure you know what happened to. Not at all. Not at all, Naruto replied. I originally came to Marioa to save a friend. But after what I saw there I decided to free every slave that was imprisoned in that living hell. I can understand why Fisher attacked Marioa in the first place. For that he has my deepest respect and admiration through I can never truly hope to measure up to him. Seething on the face of his skin, the flames hissed and spat at the distance between them, threatening to devour the admiral at the slightest provocation. But the only difference between you and Fisher Tiger, Kizaru pointed out, is that you killed 3 world nobles. It's my job to bring to justice and see you answer for crimes. He too was drawing upon his own power, willing himself to ignore the visible strain that had been inflicted upon his body already. Dark wisps of shadowy flame did their level best to intrude upon the light he was exuding and failed, filling one half of the courtyard keep with light, the other, with flame. Now, Naruto sneered, if you think you can take me down, bring it. Tendrils of smoke flame burst from the strange tattoos etched into his wrists, visible even amongst the etchings of shadow and flame. They began to take shape, form, abandoning the ethereal and favoring the material. For a moment, Kizaru marveled at it. He watched, witness to the strange shaping of the serpentine creature, almost as if it resembles Dragon of the Darkness Flame. The mighty beast of white and black flames plowed forward, jaws gaping wide. For him. For its prey, its victim, onrushing with such a speed that it occurred to Kizaru that he'd best move out of the way before it intercepted his current trajectory and a hand seized upon his shoulder, stopping him in his tracks. Going somewhere, Kizaru-san. And then there was only blackness. End flashback. What's wrong with you, Kizaru? The harsh, grating tone of Akainu irrevocably dragged Borsellino from his memories. He went to speak, but for some strange reason there was blood in his mouth. Why on earth would there be blood in his mouth, now, of all times? He drifted amidst these thoughts for a moment before he recognized the dull, aching throb in his mouth as his own, as his tongue, protesting the forces that had been applied unto it. He'd bitten his tongue, Kizaru realized. The flinty, metallic tang tasted hollow in his mouth somehow, leaving him with an eerie sense of foreboding. He doubted from the look of Akainu's face that his fellow admiral felt anything like it at all. And why would he? Akainu was too wrapped up in catching burning wool to think of much else. It mattered to him only that they inflict the most righteous, heinous, justice, upon this man whom dared to do with the world as he pleased. Still, Kizaru had been prompted to reconsider Sakazuki's proposition. Say, Kizaru began, Sakazuki. Quote? Perhaps two admirals would be best after all. 00000. Meanwhile, back on Shibandi Archipelago. What d'you mean you can't find him? Fake Luffy raged impotently. He has blonde hair, blue eyes, and whiskers for Chrysix. How many guys like that do you see around here, huh? He's burning wool, so he can't be that hard to find, so find him. Now, while he continued to swear and spit and spew all other manny of improper babble, a large pack suddenly swung around and bumped into him. He cried, falling into an unglorious heap. Oh, did I bump into you? The hooded person asked. Sorry about that. Everyone gawped. Does that guy not know who Straw Hat Luffy is? He's so dead. Hold it right there. The hooded person in the parka turned, exposing his face. His was a young face, a face that should have been easily recognized. Were it not for the ridiculous fake mustache he was currently wearing, someone might have indeed recognized him, and the oversized pack which he was wearing. Thankfully, they did not. You just bumped into me on purpose, did ya? Fake Luffy snarled. Do you know who I am? You tryin' to start something, huh, punk? You made a fool of me in front of all these people. Me, a pirate with a $400 million berry bounty. Now, on yours knees. He demanded, prodding a gun against the cheek of the silently unamused pirate who had not a clue as to what was going on. Tremble in fear, and beg for mercy. No thanks. The hooded person in the parka mumbled. I'm in a bit of a hurry, so. That's it. You little runt. Bean. One burst of hockey later. And fake Luffy and company found themselves taking a very long nap. Meanwhile, even further away on Shibandi Archipelago, the galleon was massive. Sails that would soon be fat with wind were currently furled. A deck which often bore the brunt of many scurrying feet was now pristine near to perfection. Everything about it, this ship which bore a massive lion's head at its tip, was magnificent. Perhaps even more so, considering it had been lying here in wait for the last 2 years. Approaching this masterfully made craft, with its skull and crossbones held high, fluttering in the breeze, could only marvel at in outright awe. Hence the reason Uzumaki D. Naruto was gawping wordlessly. This truly was a ship among ships. So, this is the Sunny, huh? He whistled softly. What a ship. Rather fitting, for the man who would one day become king of the pirates. Its outlandish, over-the-top style seemed to be a perfect fit for the Strafut crew, although none of them seemed to be present at the moment. That dampened his spirits a bit. He really would have liked to have met at least someone other than Nami and her outright hostile approach to things. Oh, a deep, booming voice rang out over the deck. Oi, who in the hell are you? Hello. Naruto blinked, shouldering his pack. Who is that? Is someone there? Abruptly, his enthusiasm surged to the fore. He failed to recognize the voice, but, then again, save for Nami, he'd never met any of the original Strafut crew to begin with. That one of them might be on the ship lifted his spirits considerably. Might it be the pirate hunter Zolo, Black Leg Sanji, Sogeking, or not another step if you know what's good for you? A harsh clack drew his attention, then a single red dot hovered upon his chest, emitted by the thin strand of light the like of which he'd never seen before. A targeting system, perhaps. Seconds later, nearly a dozen other gleaming red periods joined it, leaving a grand total of 12 weapons locked upon various parts of his body. Who's there? He called across the deck. Is anyone home? You bet your ass I am. Naruto had been expecting some semblance of welcome. Instead, he found himself face to face with the strangest looking human being he had ever seen in his life. Words alone could not suffice. Nor could they hope to describe him, this massive muscular monstrosity of mirthful metallic substance. With one of those giant hands, he tilted up his sunglasses and peered across the expanse that separated in less than an instant. Oi, bastard, he called. Keep your hands off Sunny. All right. Naruto held up his hands. I'm not touching. See. What the hell do you want? That earned a response. Naruto puffed out a stray strand of flame from his lips. Is Luffy here? Luffy. The strange man-bot blinked. Just how the hell do you know him, huh? Will you believe me if I tell you? Naruto asked. Probably not. The cyborg conceded. You're not the first to try and play that card. Now get out of here. If you'll just listen, I won't, to what I have to say. Scram. I'm sure you'll. Skedaddle. Understand. Get lost. What I have to. Beat it. Trash. Trash. Now, Naruto considered himself to be a patient man. And with good reason. Long had he suffered through the last 2 years of endless searching, endless training, making his share of friends and foes along the way. Long had he looked, high and low, for all the secrets that came with the subtle but dangerous art of haki, and of the Mara no Mi and the whereabouts man he'd so fervently sought. But today, after encountering obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, his patience was at an end. Here, at the cusp of completing the quest that had consumed the last 2 years of his life, being insulted and affronted at every turn. Something had to give. Yu Sai, he bellowed, a great gust of flame sweeping from his form. Will you just shut the hell up and let me talk, huh, Baka Yuru? For a moment, the cyborg cowered, then Naruto felt a round fizzle through his flesh. He paused, peering down at the now gaping hole in his chest. Frowned, watched as it closed. Then, before the cyborg could fire another shot, he came forward. Listen you. His boots thudded upon the deck as he landed, bringing himself face to face with the strangely clad cyborg. He made it all of 3 steps before another shot sputtered out of his chest, turned to ash upon contact. He permitted himself a small smile. Then he was upon the cyborg. His hands flashed outward, once, twice, 3 times, batting aside a great overhand sweep with one and striking barehanded with the other. It was an abysmal failure. He'd neglected the use of his flames during the attack. He couldn't bear the thought of damaging the ship, but in the end, all it gave him was a pair of swollen knuckles. Hands throbbing, he backed off, leering furiously. Yow! Naruto yelped. What the hell are you made of, cast iron? Atsui. The cyborg yelled, likewise waving his hand up and down comically as well. Hot. What the hell are you made of, Kono Yuru? Why I oughta. Frankie. A voice like living liquid interjected softly, there's no need for violence. Frankie. Naruto blinked. Wait. So you're actually Frankie? Oh. The strange cyborg shouted suddenly, eyes sparkling, that voice. He turned, as always, striking a pose, that booty. Naruto twisted, a blue-red Ursus slowly reappearing over his shoulder that niece beauty can only be. For the first time in his life, Uzumaki D. Naruto was truly, utterly, speechless. Despite all the majesty her eyes held, keeping his gaze focused upon her face was quickly proving to be its own a trial, thanks in part to the open blouse and the glorious sight that lay within. Naruto felt his cheeks inexplicably darken as a result. Then he chastised himself with a shake of the head. He was a pirate for Chrisix. So why couldn't he stop staring at a pair of. My eyes are up here, if you don't mind. Her voice gently tugged him from his reverie. She had a gentle look about her, and it was then, in that instant, that he realized the identity of this buck's beauty. Nico Robin. Naruto croaked out in disbelief. You're looking well, yourself. The blonde blanched. Well, shit.